The Galaxy Council Alpha Station hung in space like a blooming crystal flower, its 12 petal-shaped docks extending from a central sphere that gleamed with the light of a nearby dwarf star. Each petal represented one of the founding civilizations of the Galactic Council, each with their own architectural style incorporated into the harmonious whole. Ambassador Vel stood at the observation deck, his scaled skin catching the light as he gazed out at the stars. 300 years of peace. 300 years since the founding of the Council, when the 12 spacefaring civilizations had first agreed to put aside their differences and work together. It hadn't been easy. Old rivalries died hard, and new misunderstandings constantly threatened the fragile balance they had achieved. But they had persevered. And now the Council was the central governing body for nearly 50 worlds. And today, they would welcome the 51st. Ambassador, a voice called from behind him. Vel turned to see Brix, his diplomatic assistant, hurrying toward him, datapad in hand. The small, blue-skinned being moved with the quick, efficient strides that were characteristic of his species. "The Earth delegation has responded to our invitation," Brix said, his large eyes blinking rapidly with excitement. "They've accepted membership in the Council and have acknowledged receipt of the standard diplomatic package." Vel nodded, feeling a sense of satisfaction. Earth was a relative newcomer to interstellar travel, having developed faster-than-light capabilities only about 300 years ago. They had been exploring cautiously, establishing colonies on a handful of systems near their homeworld. The Council had been monitoring them for decades, and finally decided the time was right to extend an invitation. "Excellent," Vel said. "When will they arrive?" "They've dispatched a ship already," Brix replied. "Estimated arrival in approximately 14 hours. "So soon?" Vel was surprised. Most civilizations took weeks or even months to prepare for their first official contact with the Council. "They must be eager to join us." "Indeed," Brix said. "They've also acknowledged the standard diplomatic protocols and mentioned they're looking forward to the cultural exchange portion of the ceremony." Vel felt a flutter of excitement. The cultural exchange was always his favorite part of welcoming a new civilization. Each species brought something unique to the Council: art, music, philosophy, technology. What would the humans bring? "Let's inform the Council members," Vel said. "I want everyone to be present for the arrival ceremony." As Brix hurried off to send the notifications, Vel returned his gaze to the stars. Earth. Humans. They were an enigma. Really. Reports indicated they were remarkably adaptable, with a history marked by both terrible conflicts and remarkable achievements. Their rapid technological advancement was particularly noteworthy, going from primitive flight to interstellar travel in less than 500 years. "They'll bring something interesting to the Council," Vel murmured to himself. "I can feel it." Little did he know just how interesting it would be. The Grand Hall of the Alpha Station was filled to capacity. Representatives from all 12 founding civilizations, as well as delegates from the newer member worlds, had gathered for the arrival ceremony. The atmosphere was one of anticipation and curiosity. Leader Nara, the current head of the Council, stood at the central podium, tall and willowy, with iridescent skin that shifted colors with her emotions. She commanded respect without having to ask for it. "Friends and colleagues," she began, her voice resonating through the hall. "Today, we welcome a new civilization to our community. Earth has accepted our invitation and will soon arrive to begin the process of full integration into the Galactic Council." A murmur of approval rippled through the assembly. "As is our tradition," Nara continued, "we will begin with a formal greeting, followed by the presentation of credentials, and then move to the cultural exchange. I trust you all have reviewed the briefing materials on human physiology and basic customs." Vel, seated in the front row, nodded along with the others. The briefing had been fairly standard: oxygen breathers, carbon-based life forms, bilateral symmetry, average lifespan of about 120 standard years. Their social structures were somewhat complex, with multiple governing systems across their home planet and colonies. But they had formed a unified diplomatic corps for interstellar relations. "Our sensors indicate the Earth vessel will be arriving within the hour," Nara said. "Please take your positions for the welcoming ceremony." The delegates moved to their designated places around the perimeter of the hall, leaving the central area clear for the human delegation. Vel took his position next to Brix, who was fidgeting with excitement. "I've never seen a human in person before," Brix whispered. "Have you?" "Once," Vel replied. "A trade negotiation on the Orion station. They seemed reasonable enough. A bit direct in their communication style, but not unpleasantly so." The minutes ticked by. The grand chronometer on the wall showed the approaching arrival time. 5 minutes, 3 minutes, 1 minute. "Incoming transmission from the Earth vessel," announced Keth, the communications officer, from his station at the side of the hall. "Put it through," Nara directed. The large view screen at the front of the hall activated, but instead of showing the face of an Earth diplomat as expected, it displayed only a text message. "Greetings, Galactic Council. UES Retribution requesting docking clearance. Estimated time of arrival, 3 minutes." Nara frowned slightly. "UES Retribution? That's an unusual name for a diplomatic vessel." Vel shared her confusion. In his experience, most civilizations sent ships with names that emphasized peace, friendship, or cooperation for first contact missions. "Perhaps it's a translation issue," he suggested. "Many languages have words with multiple meanings." Nara nodded, though she didn't look entirely convinced. "Keth, grant them clearance for Dock 7. "Acknowledged," Keth replied, his fingers dancing over his console. "Clearance granted and—" "Wait." Something in his tone made everyone turn to look at him. "What is it?" Nara asked. Keth's eyes were wide as he stared at his displays. "The sensors. There must be some mistake. According to these readings, the approaching vessel is... It's what, Officer Keth?" Nara's voice had taken on an edge. Keth looked up, his expression one of disbelief. "It's a warship. Leader. A massive one." A shocked silence fell over the hall, broken only when Brix whispered, "That can't be right." But it was. As they all watched, the main view screen shifted to an external view, and there it was, a vessel unlike any they had seen before. It was enormous, at least 2 kilometers in length, with a sleek, predatory design that left no doubt about its purpose. The hull was dark, absorbing rather than reflecting light, making it seem like a shadow moving against the stars. Various protrusions that could only be weapon systems dotted its surface, and powerful engines glowed at its stern. "That's not a diplomatic vessel," someone in the hall said, stating the obvious. "That's a Dreadnought-class warship." Murmurs of alarm spread through the assembly. Some delegates were already moving toward the exits, while others demanded explanations or called for defensive measures. "We need to contact them immediately," Nara said, her skin shifting to a deep blue of concern. "There must be some misunderstanding." Before Keth could establish a channel, the view screen changed again. This time, it showed the interior of what was clearly a command bridge. Officers in dark uniforms moved efficiently at various stations, while in the center, a human male sat in a command chair. "Greetings, Galactic Council," the man said, his voice deep and confident. "I am Captain Mike Torres of the United Earthship Retribution. We come in peace and friendship, bearing the diplomatic credentials of Earth." Nara stepped forward, visibly struggling to maintain her composure. "Captain Torres, there seems to be a serious misunderstanding. We invited a diplomatic delegation from Earth. Your vessel appears to be a military warship." Torres smiled, though there was nothing threatening in his expression. "There's no misunderstanding, Leader Nara. The Retribution is indeed our diplomatic vessel." "A warship as a diplomatic vessel?" Nara couldn't keep the incredulity from her voice. This is unprecedented and, frankly, alarming to many of our members. Torres nodded, as if he had expected this reaction. I understand your concern, but from Earth's perspective, there is no contradiction. The retribution represents our commitment to transparency in all dealings with the Galactic Council. Transparency, Vel couldn't help but interject. How does bringing a weapon of war to a peaceful gathering demonstrate transparency? Torres turned his attention to Vel. Ambassador Vel, I presume. Let me ask you this. Would you prefer we hid our military capabilities while pretending to be something we're not? Earth has a long history of warfare. Yes, but also a long history of striving for peace. We've learned that lasting peace comes not from denying our capacity for violence, but from acknowledging it and choosing cooperation instead. The captain's words gave Vel pause. There was a certain logic to it, though it ran counter to all diplomatic traditions the Council had established. Captain, Nara said, regaining control of the conversation. Your ship is causing considerable alarm among our delegates. We would ask that you withdraw to a safe distance and send a smaller, unarmed shuttle for the diplomatic proceedings. Torres shook his head. I'm afraid that would defeat the purpose of our approach. We come as we are, both our capacity for war and our desire for peace. Both are part of who we are as a species. Besides, he added, the cultural exchange portion of the ceremony would be difficult to conduct without the full ship and crew. Cultural exchange? Brix blurted out, looking bewildered. What could you possibly— Perhaps, Vel interrupted, an idea forming. We should hear what Captain Torres has in mind for the cultural exchange before making any decisions. Nara gave him a sharp look, but after a moment's consideration, she nodded. Very well. Captain Torres, please explain what you mean by a cultural exchange in this context. Torres smiled again, more warmly this time. Thank you, Ambassador, Leader. What we propose is a demonstration of what we call warrior diplomacy, the art of maintaining peace through strength, transparency, and mutual respect. With your permission, we would like to dock and then invite a delegation from the Council aboard the Retribution for this demonstration. The hall erupted in a mixture of objections and curious murmurs. Nara raised her hands for silence. This is highly irregular, she said, once the noise had subsided. But in the spirit of openness that has guided the Council since its founding, I am willing to allow it, provided we receive detailed scans of your vessel first, and that any delegation will be guaranteed safe passage and return. Of course, Torres agreed readily. We'll transmit full schematics of the Retribution immediately, and I give you my personal guarantee of safety for any delegates who wish to come aboard. Vel found himself volunteering before he fully realized what he was doing. I would like to be part of this delegation, he said, ignoring Brix's look of alarm. Several other council members also volunteered, including, to everyone's surprise, Leader Nara herself. Very well, Nara said. We will meet your vessel at Dock 7 in 1 hour, after we have reviewed your schematics. Torres nodded. We look forward to it. Retribution out. As the view screen went dark, the grand hall dissolved into chaos, with delegates arguing, questioning, and speculating about the humans and their strange approach to diplomacy. Vel found himself cornered by an agitated Brix. Ambassador, you can't seriously be considering going aboard that weapon, Brix hissed. It's a trap. It has to be. Vel shook his head. I don't think so. There's something intriguing about their approach. It's certainly direct, perhaps even crude by our standards, but I sense no deception from this Captain Torres. But, besides, Vel added, if we're going to understand these humans well enough to integrate them into the Council, we need to understand their perspective. This seems like an opportunity to do just that. Brix didn't look convinced, but he knew better than to argue further. Just be careful, Ambassador. Vel placed a reassuring hand on his assistant's shoulder. Always, my friend. Always. The schematics of the Retribution proved to be even more alarming than the initial sensor readings had suggested. The ship was indeed a dedicated warship, with 47 distinct weapon systems, multiple layers of defensive shields, and armor plating that could withstand tremendous punishment. It had a crew of over 2,000, many of whom appeared to be military personnel. But it also contained laboratories, medical facilities, manufacturing capabilities, and other systems that seemed more appropriate for a colony ship or research vessel than a pure instrument of war. It's like they've combined 3 or 4 different ship types into one, commented Keth, as the council delegation reviewed the data. Efficient, Nara remarked, though concerning in its implications. An hour later, the delegation, consisting of Vel, Nara, and 5 other council representatives, stood at Dock 7 as the massive Retribution completed its docking procedures. Despite its size, the ship maneuvered with surprising grace, settling into position with precision. A docking tube extended from the station to connect with one of the ship's airlocks. After a few moments, the inner door slid open to reveal Captain Torres, now standing in person before them. He was tall for a human, with dark hair cropped short and piercing eyes that seemed to assess everything they fell upon. His uniform was dark blue, adorned with symbols of rank that the council members had studied in the briefing materials. "Welcome, delegates of the Galactic Council," Torres said, inclining his head in a gesture of respect. "I'm honored to have you aboard the Retribution." "The honor is mutual, Captain," Nara replied formally, though her skin had taken on a wary purple hue. "We are curious about this warrior diplomacy you mentioned." Torres gestured for them to follow him into the ship. "It began about 100 years ago, during our early expansion into space. We encountered several situations that taught us valuable lessons about the relationship between strength and peace." As they walked through the corridors of the ship, Vel was struck by how functional everything was. Unlike the aesthetic beauty of council vessels, with their harmonious curves and artistic flourishes, the Retribution was all straight lines and practical surfaces. Yet there was a certain elegance to its utility. "What kinds of situations?" Vel asked, genuinely curious. Torres glanced back at him. "Piracy, border disputes, misunderstandings with potential to escalate. We found that being transparent about our capabilities often prevented conflicts before they began." "You mean you threatened potential adversaries?" one of the other delegates said, not bothering to hide his disapproval. Torres stopped and turned to face them fully. "No, Counselor, we informed. There's a crucial difference. A threat is meant to intimidate. Information is meant to prevent miscalculation. We never want anyone to fight us because they underestimated what that fight would mean." There was something compelling about his reasoning, Vel had to admit. They continued through the ship, eventually arriving at a large hangar bay that had been converted into what appeared to be an observation area. Rows of seats faced a cleared central space, and view screens lined the walls. "Please, be seated," Torres invited them. "The demonstration is about to begin." As the council delegation took their seats, other humans in various uniforms entered and took positions around the perimeter of the room. Vel noticed that while all were clearly military personnel, they carried no visible weapons. "What we're about to show you," Torres explained as he took a seat next to Nara, "is a series of demonstrations that represent the core of warrior diplomacy as practiced by Earth." At his nod, the central area lit up, and a group of humans entered. They wore form-fitting black uniforms and moved with coordinated precision. First, Torres narrated, a demonstration of coordinated tactical response. What followed was unlike anything the council delegates had ever seen. The humans moved in perfect synchronization, executing what was clearly a combat exercise, but with a grace and precision that made it seem almost like a dance. They formed complex patterns, responded to simulated threats, and demonstrated defensive formations that flowed from one to another seamlessly. "This is not what I expected," Nara murmured to Vel. "Nor I," he admitted. The demonstration shifted. Now medical personnel rushed forward, treating simulated injuries with remarkable speed and efficiency. "Battlefield medicine," Torres explained. "Every member of our crew is trained in basic life-saving techniques, regardless of their primary role." Next came a demonstration of engineering skills, rapidly assembling and disassembling complex machinery, rerouting power systems, and creating makeshift tools from limited resources. "Versatility is key to our approach," Torres said. "Every crew member is trained in multiple disciplines. A warrior who can only fight is of limited use. A warrior who can fight, heal, build, and teach is invaluable." The demonstrations continued, each more impressive than the last. The humans showed off their communication systems, their decision-making protocols, their ability to adapt to changing circumstances. Throughout it all, there was an underlying theme of discipline tempered with initiative, of strength guided by wisdom. Finally, the demonstrations concluded with a simulation of a diplomatic negotiation, but one conducted from a position of clear strength, with the human negotiators making no attempt to hide their military backing. "This is how Earth approaches interstellar diplomacy," Torres said as the lights came up. "We come as we are, warriors. Yes, but warriors dedicated to peace. We believe that pretending to be anything else would be both dishonest and dangerous." There was a long silence as the council delegates absorbed what they had seen. "It's different from our approach," Nara finally said, choosing her words carefully. "The council was founded on principles of putting aside military power in favor of dialogue and compromise." "And how has that worked out?" Torres asked, his tone genuinely curious rather than challenging. Nara's skin shifted to a thoughtful green. "Generally well, though there have been challenges." "The hegemony incident," one of the other delegates muttered. Torres raised an eyebrow. "Hegemony?" Vel decided to explain. "A group of worlds on the outer rim of council space. They withdrew from the council about 50 years ago, claiming our policies were too soft, too accommodating. They've been a thorn in our side ever since, raiding shipping lanes, making territorial claims, occasionally threatening military action. But never actually following through," Nara added quickly. "Our diplomatic corps has always managed to defuse the situations." "At a cost," another delegate said. "Each time, we give a little ground, make another concession." "Because the alternative is conflict," Nara countered, "which goes against everything the council stands for." Torres watched this exchange with interest. "And the hegemony knows this." It wasn't a question, but Nara nodded anyway. "They do. Which means," Torres continued, "they can continue to push, knowing you'll always back down rather than fight." The observation hung in the air, uncomfortable in its accuracy. "Our way isn't perfect," Vel admitted after a moment. "But it has maintained peace for 300 years. "Peace at what cost?" Torres asked softly. "And for how much longer?" Before anyone could respond, a chime sounded, and one of the human officers approached Torres, speaking quietly in his ear. The captain's expression darkened. "It seems we may find out sooner rather than later," he said, standing abruptly. "We're detecting a fleet of ships approaching the station. Their configuration matches the descriptions of hegemony vessels you've provided in your database." Nara rose as well, her skin paling to an alarmed white. "That's impossible. They wouldn't dare attack the Alpha Station directly." "Apparently, they would," Torres said grimly. "And the timing suggests they may be aware of our presence here." "We need to return to the station immediately," Nara declared. "The council must convene to address this." Torres nodded. "Of course. I'll escort you back to the dock." As they hurried through the corridors, Vel found himself walking alongside the captain. "This is most unfortunate timing," he said. Torres gave him a sideways glance. "Is it? Or is it perhaps the most fortunate timing possible? Vel didn't have an answer for that. The scene that greeted them upon returning to the Alpha Station was one of barely controlled panic. Delegates rushed through the corridors. Security personnel tried to maintain order, and the command center was a hub of frantic activity. "Report!" Nara demanded as she strode into the center, the human captain close behind her. 15 hegemony warships have entered the outer perimeter of our space, Keth reported. His voice strained. "They're not responding to hails. Their weapons are powered and shields are up." "Evacuation protocols?" Nara asked. "In progress, but we can't possibly get everyone off the station before they arrive." Torres stepped forward. "Leader Nara, with your permission, the Retribution stands ready to assist." Nara hesitated, clearly torn. The arrival of the human warship had caused such consternation just hours ago, and now it might be their only hope of defense. "What exactly are you proposing, Captain?" she asked. "Let us deal with the hegemony fleet," Torres said simply. "You're outnumbered 15-1, Vel pointed out. Torres smiled, and there was something both reassuring and slightly terrifying in that expression. "Numbers aren't everything, Ambassador." Nara looked around at her fellow council members, reading their expressions. There was fear there, but also a growing resolve. "Very well, Captain Torres," she said finally. "The council accepts your offer of assistance." Torres nodded crisply. "Thank you, Leader. We'll handle this." He tapped a communication device on his wrist. "Commander Riley, prepare the ship for immediate departure. Battle stations. Protocol Sigma." "What is Protocol Sigma?" Vel couldn't help but ask. "Non-lethal intervention," Torres replied. "We're going to demonstrate another aspect of warrior diplomacy." With a final nod to the council members, Torres turned and strode from the command center, his posture radiating confidence. "Do you think they can actually stop the hegemony fleet?" Brix asked, having appeared at Vel's side. "I don't know," Vel admitted. "But I think we're about to find out what these humans are truly capable of." The main view screen in the command center switched to an external view, showing the Retribution disengaging from the docking port and moving away from the station with impressive speed for a vessel of its size. "Incoming transmission from the hegemony fleet," Keth announced. "Put it through," Nara ordered. The screen split, one side showing the approaching fleet, the other displaying the face of a reptilian being with a crest of bony plates running from the top of his head down his spine. "General Krex," Nara said, her voice cold. "This is an unprovoked act of aggression against the Galactic Council." Krex's mouth twisted in what passed for a smile among his species. "Unprovoked? Hardly. We have received word that the Council is negotiating with a new species, humans, for military alliance against the hegemony. We are simply taking preventative measures." "That is absolutely false," Nara replied. "Earth has been invited to join the Council, yes, but there is no military alliance." Krex's eyes narrowed. "Then explain the presence of that." He gestured, and the image shifted to show the Retribution, now moving to intercept the hegemony fleet. "The Earth vessel is here on a diplomatic mission," Nara insisted. "A diplomatic mission in a Dreadnought-class warship?" Krex laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Do you take me for a fool, Nara? No, the Council has finally shown its true colors. You speak of peace while preparing for war. Well, we shall give you war." The transmission cut off abruptly. "They're increasing speed," Keth reported. "Weapons fully charged. They'll be in firing range in 3 minutes." "And the Retribution?" Vel asked. "Moving to intercept. They've powered up their defensive systems, but their weapons remain in standby mode." "What?" Brix exclaimed. "They're facing 15 warships and they're not even preparing to fire." No one had an answer. The minutes ticked by in tense silence, all eyes fixed on the view screen. The hegemony fleet had formed a wedge formation, with the largest vessel at the point. The Retribution, by contrast, was moving directly toward them, alone, and seemingly unperturbed by the odds. "Firing range in 30 seconds, Keth announced, his voice barely above a whisper. "The retribution is transmitting to all frequencies," another officer reported, "including our internal channels." "Let's hear it," Nara decided. Captain Torres's voice filled the command center, calm and authoritative. "Hegemony vessels, this is Captain Mike Torres of the UES Retribution. You are engaging in hostile actions against a peaceful diplomatic station. We advise you to stand down immediately." There was a pause. Then, General Krex's voice responded with a sneer. "One ship against 15? Your courage is admirable, human. But courage alone won't save you or your new allies." "This is not about courage, General," Torres replied evenly. "This is about preventing an unnecessary conflict. I repeat, stand down." "Fire!" Krex ordered, and the command center watched in horror as the Hegemony fleet released a barrage of energy weapons toward the Retribution. But what happened next defied all expectations. The Retribution didn't attempt to evade. Instead, it seemed to shimmer, and then, impossibly, the energy blasts passed through it as if it weren't there. "Hologram!" someone in the command center gasped. But no, the sensors still showed the Retribution as a solid object. It had simply... Vel didn't even have the words to describe what he was seeing. "Phase shift technology," Keth whispered in awe. "They can alter their molecular structure to allow energy weapons to pass through them." The Hegemony fleet fired again, with the same result. And now the Retribution was moving, accelerating to a speed that seemed impossible for a vessel of its size, weaving between the Hegemony ships with grace that belied its massive bulk. And then, finally, the Retribution's weapons came online. But they weren't what anyone expected. Instead of the devastating barrage that a dreadnought should be capable of, precise beams of energy shot out, targeting specific systems on each Hegemony vessel: weapons, engines, shields, communications. "They're disabling them," Vel realized. "Not destroying them, just neutralizing the threat." Within minutes, 12 minutes and 23 seconds. According to the command center's chronometer, 23 of the Hegemony vessels hung dead in space, with no propulsion, no weapons, and minimal life support. The remaining 2 had attempted to flee, but were quickly caught in some kind of energy net deployed by the Retribution. "Incoming transmission from Captain Torres," Keth announced, his voice filled with disbelief. Torres appeared on the screen, looking as calm as if he were reporting on a routine patrol. "Leader Nara, the Hegemony threat has been neutralized. No casualties on either side. We're bringing General Krex to the station for discussions. I believe he may be more amenable to diplomatic solutions now." Nara could only nod, her skin cycling through a range of colors that reflected her tumultuous emotions. "We'll be docking in approximately 20 minutes, Torres continued. "Retribution out." As the screen went dark, the command center erupted in a mixture of cheers, questions, and exclamations of disbelief. Vel turned to Brix, who was staring at the view screen with his mouth literally hanging open. "I believe," Vel said quietly, "that we have just witnessed the most effective diplomatic statement in the history of the Council." 6 months later, the Alpha Station had been transformed. What had once been primarily a diplomatic hub was now also the headquarters of the Galactic Security Force, a joint initiative between Earth and the Council, dedicated to maintaining peace throughout known space. Ambassador Vel stood on the observation deck once again, but this time he was not alone. Captain Torres, now Admiral Torres, though he still preferred to be addressed by his former rank, stood beside him, both of them watching as a mixed fleet of vessels conducted exercises in the space around the station. "The Hegemony ships are integrating well with the rest of the fleet," Vel observed. Torres nodded. "General Krex has proven to be an excellent tactician. Once he got over his initial resistance." Vel chuckled at the understatement. Krex's resistance had consisted of 3 days of shouting, threats, and refusals to cooperate, followed by a sudden shift to grudging respect after Torres had offered him a position in the new security force. "It's remarkable how quickly things have changed," Vel said. 6 months ago, the idea of a combined military force would have been unthinkable to most council members. "Sometimes all it takes is a demonstration of a better way," Torres replied. "Your approach wasn't working. Ours might not be perfect either, but it's producing results." And it was. Since the formation of the Galactic Security Force, piracy in council space had decreased by 70%. Border disputes were being resolved through arbitration, backed by the implicit understanding that the security force could enforce the decisions if necessary. Even the hegemony worlds had been reintegrated into the council, though with special provisions that acknowledge their more martial culture. "I've been meaning to ask you something," Vel said after a moment. "That day, with the hegemony fleet, the way the Retribution moved, the phase shift technology, those precision weapons, did Earth really develop all of that independently?" Torres smiled. "Wondering if we had help? Some advanced alien benefactor guiding our technological development?" "The thought had crossed my mind." Torres shook his head. "No, Ambassador. Everything you saw was the result of human ingenuity and determination. We've had our share of wars, as you know, but each conflict taught us something, pushed our technology forward. And somewhere along the way, we realized that the best way to prevent war was to be so good at it that no one would dare start one." "Pax humana," Vel said, using the Latin phrase he had learned in his studies of Earth culture. "Something like that," Torres agreed. "Though we prefer to think of it as peace through transparency. We don't hide what we can do, but we also make it clear that we choose not to use that capability unless absolutely necessary." "It's certainly been effective," Vel admitted. "Though I must confess, I'm still getting used to seeing humans and hegemony warriors training together." As if on cue, the view screen showed a joint exercise between human Marines and hegemony soldiers, their former enmity apparently forgotten in the shared purpose of their training. "Common purpose is a powerful unifying force," Torres said. "Give people something meaningful to work toward together, and old hatreds tend to fade." A chime sounded, and Brix's voice came over the communication system. "Ambassador Vel, Admiral Torres, the council session is about to begin." "Thank you, Brix," Vel replied. "We're on our way." As they walked toward the council chambers, Vel couldn't help but reflect on the changes of the past 6 months. The station was busier now, with military personnel from a dozen species working alongside the traditional diplomatic staff. There had been tensions at first, of course, but they had gradually given way to a new kind of harmony, one based not on the denial of conflict, but on its acknowledgement and management. "Today's the official vote, isn't it?" Torres asked as they walked. "On Earth's formal acceptance into the Council?" Vel nodded. "A formality at this point, but yes. Along with the ratification of the security maintenance protocols." "Nervous?" Torres asked with a slight smile. "About the vote? No. It will pass unanimously." Vel paused. "About the future? Perhaps a little. We're entering uncharted territory here, Captain. The Council has never had a member world with Earth's particular approach to diplomacy." Torres considered this. "Change is always a little frightening, Ambassador. But stagnation is worse. The Council needed this shakeup. You needed someone to challenge your assumptions, just as we needed someone to remind us of the value of consensus and collaboration." They reached the entrance to the council chambers, where delegates were already filing in for the historic session. "Well," Vel said, "here's to the beginning of a new era in galactic diplomacy." Torres smiled. "The age of effective diplomacy, you mean?" "Indeed," Vel agreed, and together, they entered the chamber to help shape the future of the galaxy. The formal acceptance of Earth into the Galactic Council, with its special provision for security maintenance, was indeed unanimous. As the votes were tallied and the results announced, a spontaneous cheer erupted from the assembled delegates, something unprecedented in the traditionally reserved council chambers. Nara, still serving as council leader, raised her hands for silence, her skin glowing with a warm, golden hue of satisfaction. "With this vote," she declared, "we enter a new chapter in the history of the Galactic Council. We welcome Earth, not just as our newest member, but as our partner in creating a truly secure and peaceful galaxy." She turned to Torres, who stood at attention beside the Earth ambassador, a career diplomat who had arrived 2 months after the hegemony incident and had been content to let Torres handle most of the substantive negotiations. "Admiral Torres," Nara continued, "your arrival among us was unexpected, to say the least. You challenged our preconceptions, disrupted our comfortable assumptions, and forced us to reconsider what true peace means. For that, we are grateful." Torres inclined his head in acknowledgement. "The gratitude is mutual. Leader Nara, Earth has much to learn from the Council's 3 centuries of interspecies cooperation. We look forward to contributing our perspective, but also to growing and evolving as part of this remarkable community." The formalities concluded. The chamber dissolved into more casual interactions. Vel found himself approached by Dr. Zinn, the Council's chief xenobiologist, who had been studying human physiology with fascination since their arrival. "Ambassador," Zinn greeted him, her feathered crest vibrating with excitement. "Have you heard about the Joint Medical Initiative? The humans are sharing their battlefield medicine techniques, and in return, we're teaching them our regenerative therapies. The potential for advancement is enormous." "I hadn't heard the details," Vel admitted. "But I'm not surprised. Integration seems to be proceeding in all sectors." "Indeed," Zinn agreed. "I've been working closely with Dr. Webb from the Retribution. Brilliant mind, and remarkably adaptable for a species with such a short, evolutionary history of space travel." Similar conversations were happening throughout the chamber. Engineer Park from Earth discussing propulsion systems with Counselor Drav of the Teln. Commander Riley explaining Earth's tactical training protocols to a group of security officers from various Council worlds. Everywhere, the barriers that had initially seemed so insurmountable were falling away, replaced by genuine collaboration and mutual respect. Vel spotted Torres standing somewhat apart from the crowd, observing the interactions with a satisfied expression. "Enjoying your handiwork, Captain?" Vel asked, as he joined him. Torres chuckled. "Hardly my handiwork alone, Ambassador. This is what happens when different perspectives are allowed to complement each other, rather than compete." "Still," Vel insisted, "none of this would have happened if the Retribution hadn't arrived exactly when it did, or if you hadn't handled the hegemony situation as you did." "Perhaps," Torres conceded, "or perhaps something else would have catalyzed the change. The Council was due for an evolution, Ambassador. If it hadn't been us, it would have been someone else." Vel wasn't so sure, but he let the matter drop. "What happens now? For you? I mean, will you continue to command the Retribution, or will Earth send a replacement now that the initial introduction is complete?" "I'll stay," Torres said. "At least for the foreseeable future. The security force is still in its formative stages, and continuity of leadership is important. Besides," he added with a smile, "I've grown rather fond of this station and its inhabitants." "The feeling is mutual," Vel assured him. "Though I must admit, there are still moments when I look out at the fleet and have to remind myself that those ships are defenders of the peace, not harbingers of war." "The line between the two has always been thinner than most people realize," Torres said. "The same force that can destroy can also protect. The same ship that can invade can also defend. It's all in how you use it, and why." A chime sounded, signaling the transition to the ceremonial reception that would follow the council session. "Shall we?" Torres gestured toward the exit. As they walked, Vel found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought them to this point. From the alarm and confusion of the Retribution's arrival to the current state of integrated cooperation, it was a transformation he could never have imagined 6 months ago. "You know," he said as they approached the reception hall, "in all the excitement of the past months, I never properly thanked you." Torres looked surprised. "Thanked me? For what?" "For showing us a different way, for challenging our assumptions, for saving the Alpha Station from the hegemony." Vel spread his hands. "Take your pick." Torres was silent for a moment, then said, "There's no need for thanks, Ambassador. We did what we believed was right, what was necessary for true and lasting peace. In the end, isn't that what diplomacy is really about? Not just avoiding conflict, but creating the conditions where conflict becomes unnecessary." Vel considered this. "A profound perspective, Captain, and one that I believe will serve the Council well in the years to come." They entered the reception hall, where delegates from all the Council worlds mingled with the humans from the Retribution and the newly arrived Earth Diplomatic Corps. Music played, a fusion of styles from various cultures, including human compositions. Food and drink from a dozen worlds were being served. The atmosphere was one of genuine celebration. "To effective diplomacy," Vel said, raising a glass in toast. Torres smiled and raised his own glass in response. "To peace through strength, transparency, and mutual respect." Their glasses clinked together, a small sound that nevertheless seemed to Vel to symbolize something much larger, the beginning of a new era for the Galactic Council, and for the galaxy as a whole. An era of warrior diplomacy, an era of effective peace. And as he looked around at the diverse beings gathered in the hall, former enemies now allies, different species finding common ground, Vel knew that despite the unconventional way it had begun, this new chapter in galactic history promised to be brighter than anything that had come before. After all, as the humans had shown them, true strength lay not in denying one's capacity for conflict, but in acknowledging it and choosing cooperation instead. It was a lesson the Council had needed to learn, and one that would guide them all into a future of genuine and lasting peace.